In this video, I want to talk about the interactions between teachers and students in a Google Classroom. Now, to do that, I'm going to show both sides of that interaction. So on the left side over here, I'm going to show the teacher view of Google Classroom, and then on the right side, I'm going to show the student view. Now, the first interaction that you can have between students and teachers is to have the students come into your classroom. And there are two ways to do that. The first way, and the way that I prefer, is to set up your classroom and then have a class code, which is down here, or it's on the left side of the screen, and have your students type in the class code to enter into your classroom. Now, they can do this for every classroom. And this class code, for example, has a 1 and a couple of I's. So if I'm concerned that my students can't tell the difference between the 1's and the I's, I can always go down here and reset the class code, and it'll change the numbers to something else, and I can get them to be more easy to read. I can also disable the class code if I don't want students to join in themselves. The other way is to go over here and go to Student. And if I click on the Student tab, there are 3 tabs, by the way, at the top of your classroom. The first one is the stream, which is where all the information is. The second one is students. I can invite students. If I click on invite, I can type in the emails of my different students, and I can find them and add them to the class that way. If you add students that way, the student still has to accept your invitation. So on the student end of things, they will have something that comes up that says that they've been invited to a classroom, and they have to accept that invitation. Let me talk about the third tab since I mentioned it. The third tab is the About tab. In this tab, the teacher can write a title for the About page and a description of the class. They can put a classroom, and they can also add materials. So if you wanted to add a syllabus or the rules for the Google Classroom or whatever you want to put, you can add materials down here as well. Then on the About tab for the students, what they would see is they would see any of that information. So if I put a title, they would then see the title come up here, and if I had any materials listed, they would see the materials down here that I have for the class. Alright, let's get to the different things that you can do with Google Classroom once you have your students in the classroom. And there are 2 basic functions in the classroom for a teacher. The first one is to create announcements, and the second one is to create assignments. Now, when you click on these, they will come up in the stream, so you'll actually see them in the stream, and it'll just be a place where you can fill out your announcement or your assignment. And they're very similar in functionality. There's very few differences between the two. For announcements, you still have 4 options to assign to students or things that they can see. And in assignments, you have those same 4 things. And those things are to add an attachment that you upload from your computer, add something from Google Drive, add a YouTube video, or add a link to a web page. And those are the same whether they're announcements or assignments. Now, the main difference between these two is when you create an announcement, you can't have your students turn something in. So you could do announcements if you wanted them to do something that they're not going to turn in Classroom, but they're going to turn it in outside of Classroom. The other thing that happens with announcements is it doesn't show up in the assignments stream for the students. If you look right here where it says assignments, when you make assignments, down here there's 2 assignments, announcements won't show up in that stream. So if you want your students to be aware of what is assigned and what is due, then you need to be careful about this part right here if you're going to make an announcement. Now, for an announcement, you just type in the name of the announcement. And then if you want to talk about the announcement, let's say that this announcement is actually a small assignment that you want your students to do. You could write directions for that assignment, and then you could have them go to a website, let's say, and you want them to check out the website. So I could attach a link to something that I wanted them to go to. Now, I'm not actually going to post an announcement because essentially announcements look the same as assignments over here, except they aren't something that can be turned in. So I'm going to focus my attention mainly on assignments. Okay, so I'm going to click over here on assignments, and then I'm going to name an assignment. So this is my example assignment, and I'll actually create this assignment. So for my description, again, this is where I can put directions or if I want to talk about something else. There's a due date to go along with this assignment. And so the default due date is the day after the current day. So if you want something due the next day, so if you want them to do something overnight, you can do this. If you want the due date to be something later in the future, you can change it on here. You can also add a time that things are due. However, I want to caution you about adding a time. Right now, and I'm sure this will change, but right now Google does not identify the time that something is due on the student stream. So if you want something due at 4 o'clock in the afternoon and the student can't see that, the student could turn it in later than that, think it's okay because it says here due today. They think they got it done, but then in your view as a teacher, it shows up as late. So right now, the time that you add does not actually show up for the students, so I would avoid that probably until that gets fixed. Okay. One other thing, and I wanted to expand this because I don't know if it showed this in the smaller view or not, or I didn't see it, so I wanted to expand it. You can choose which classes you want to assign something to. So if you have 3 class periods that you teach the same thing, or something like that, you can make one assignment and you can choose what classes to put that assignment in, and then that assignment will be assigned to all of those classes. So I don't just have to assign to this one class, I can assign to all my classes. Oh, and in this smaller view it just showed up right here, so it was just in a different location, so I didn't see it. Now let me attach something. With the attachments, basically everything that you attach has 3 options to it. And when I say everything, I mean everything in the Google Drive. If you attach a document or things like that, the choices are different. But in a Google Drive, there's this little drop-down menu here, and if you click on the arrow, if I was in full view, let me switch to that, you would actually see the arrow. And there are 3 choices. Students can view the file, students can edit the file, or you can make a copy for each student. And this make a copy for each student thing is really where the power of Google Classroom comes in. So if you make a copy for each student, every student in your classroom, or if you want to set them up in groups, every group in your classroom will have one copy that they can work on. And even though they're making copies, those copies stay in your drive. So you'll be able to look at the different copies that the students have. So I'm going to set this up. I've now attached something from my Google Drive. I've made a copy for every one of my students, and I'm going to assign it. I will say one other thing before I do that I just thought of. You don't have to do just one thing here. If you have an assignment with multiple attachments, I can attach something else. Let's say that I want to give them a website as a resource for this. And I don't know if I have to do the www or not, so I'll do that. And I can add an additional resource simply by clicking on each of these. And I don't know if there's a limit, but if there's not a limit, you can continue to add as you go. So in any case, I'm going to click Assign and assign this to my students. Now, when I go through that process, it will eventually come up in my student stream. I also want to make a comment about actually clicking buttons in Classroom. I don't know if this will be changed or not, but right now you have to click buttons for most things that you do in Classroom 2 times, which is kind of irritating in my opinion. But just so that you're aware of it when you're clicking on things, when you click on it the first time and it doesn't go there, you have to click on it a second time. Alright, so you see here in the student view that it says one new item has been posted in the stream. So if I click on that, what it'll do is it'll refresh this and it'll put this new assignment in my stream. So right now I actually did a couple earlier that I did, and we'll talk about those later, but this assignment now showed up in the stream. The other thing is it shows up in the assignments column. The left side for students is an assignment column, and you can see that in the teacher side as well, but it puts the soonest due dates on the top. So the things that are due today show up first, and then the new assignment that I did is due tomorrow, so it shows up second. If I did something later in the week, it would show up in this assignment task in that time, so they're in order. Now, one other thing about doing assignments for students is, and let me show you this by going to the hamburger up here. I found out that Google called this the hamburger. I didn't know that before. Actually, they call this the hamburger right here, but this looks basically the same. If you click on the classroom menu, what this does is it opens up a location where they can go to their home screen, and their home screen you can see all of the classes that they are in. They can also go directly to the class, but there's a third button on here that they have, and that's assignments. What assignments does is it brings them to a page that lists all of their assignments, and this isn't just the assignments in one class, this is the assignments in every single class that they have, which is really convenient because if you have students in multiple classes, whether you're in elementary and you have individual classes for like math and reading and science and whatever, or if you're at the middle school or high school level, and your students actually have different classes, all of their assignments show up in this one location, so they can always go here to see what their newest assignments that are due. And then from here, they can actually click to go to those assignments as well. So I could click on example assignment, which was the one that I just created, and it would bring me to that assignment in Google. Now, I want to talk about one issue with the assignments that I am having, and that is when students click on assignments, a lot of times they don't show up right away. Because I've created an attachment to go with this assignment, that attachment will be created in the student folder, but it's not created until they actually click on it. But there seems to be a little bit of lag time between when you create an assignment and when a student can actually view an assignment. So I might have to pause this video after I click on this to give the computer time to get this to work. The other issue that I might be having is that my student assignment is in Internet Explorer. I needed two different browsers so that I could do this in both. You can do two different classrooms in one, but you can't do two different Google Drives very easily in one web browser, so I wanted to split it up into a second web browser. And it's not always nice with Internet Explorer, so it has some issue. So I have this issue a lot where it goes and it circles here. So I'm going to pause the recording until I can get it to come up. Okay, so I got the assignment to show up in the student version. So if you take a look in here, when I click on the assignment, it has this that I can view. So your students, what they're going to do when they're going to edit whatever document it is that you send to them, they're going to go into their assignment and they're going to click on this. In this case, my document was called Template 1, and you'll notice that now it's called Template 1-Mickey Mouse, which is the name of this student. Now, because of that, with what that does, let me show you that in Google Drive also. Now, in Google Drive, when I create a class, and let me expand this. So this is the teacher view. When I create a class, and I called it video class, and if I back up a step, when I signed up for Classroom, it created a Classroom tab. So first off, I have a Classroom tab, and in that, every single class that I have, either that I have created myself or classes that I am in. So if you are in a class with other teachers or something like that, it would show up also. But in that classroom, what I have is I have a folder for every single assignment that I create, and then I have one folder called templates. Every time I attach something in Google Drive, it will go in my template folder. So I will have a copy of every single assignment that I gave students right there in one folder. But in addition to that, I will have templates created for each student. So this says Template 1-Mickey Mouse. That template is now assigned to my student, and you look over here where it says owner. It says owner is Mickey Mouse. Once you create an assignment for a student, the ownership transfers over to that student. So in the student's drive, if they click on their classroom folder, and hopefully it loads, again, since I'm having issues with Google Drive as far as working on Internet Explorer, it's a little slow on loading things. But all of these are actually different assignments that I've given. I just keep giving the same assignment over and over and over again. So the most recent one is this top one. And you'll notice that these are all owned by Mickey Mouse. It says owned by me, the student. One of them, and this is something that I did earlier, is owned by the teacher, Ryan Munson, and the reason that it's owned by him is because that's been submitted to, it's been submitted in the classroom to the teacher again. Okay, let's actually go back to the classroom and see what happens when a student turns things in. So, A student can click here and turn stuff in. I do want to point out on turning things in that students don't actually have to open the template to turn it in. And if they don't, then they can just turn in whatever it is that you gave them. So you can't just go and say, oh look, they turned it in, and give them points, because if they just hit the button, it'll turn it in for them. So you actually have to check that. Now I'm not actually going to go to the template and edit anything, but I can. It's editable for the student. So if he clicks on it, he could actually turn it in. I changed my mind. Let me show that to you. Because I also want to show you the turn it in feature from right here. So as the student, I can change things here if I want to on this template. Now, the other thing about this template that's cool is there's actually a button up here that's a turn it in button. The students can turn in directly from what they're working on. So when it's time to turn it in, they can just click on this button, and that button will actually bring them back to the classroom, and there will be a pop-up screen that says turn it in. If they want to turn it in, they can click the button that says turn it in, and this will say turning in, and it'll turn in the assignment. Now, hopefully it happened somewhat quickly, but once the student turns the assignment in, it reverts ownership back to me, the teacher. So now I, the teacher, have ownership once again. So this is the teacher's ownership, or the teacher's Google Drive, and it says that the owner is now me instead of Mickey Mouse. When assignments are submitted, the ownership transfers to the teacher. Now, one thing that Google Classroom has done is they have an unsubmit button. Students can decide that they don't like what they submitted, and they can click on this button and it will transfer ownership back to them, and they can edit and turn it back into you. And they can do that as many times as they want. And one thing that I don't like is you can't shut it off. I would like to be able to hold on to assignments after they've been turned in so that students can't unsubmit them, especially at the time that I'm grading the assignments. But hopefully that will be addressed in the future. Okay, now that Mickey Mouse has turned in this assignment, if you look up here, in my assignment tab, there are 3 columns, and one is the assignment itself, and then there's one for done and one for not done. Now it says 1 in the done column because that assignment has been turned in, and it says 0 in the not done. Now, you're supposed to be able to click on these so that you can see all of the done assignments and all of the not done assignments, but right now it appears that that feature is not working. Let me expand this full screen to talk about what you can do for grading this and stuff. Now, I will say from the teacher point of view, you can get to seeing just who's done, and here's how you do it. Up here where it says assignment status and assignment details, if you click on assignment details, then these are actually clickable. So I can click on one done, and now they're not clickable. Earlier when I did this, I was able to click on them from here and see who was done and who was not done. But apparently that changed. Isn't that wonderful? Anyway, let's talk about this view and what I can do. There is there's a location here for grading, and you can choose what grade you want. You can do out of 1, 20, 50, or 100, or you can choose ungraded if this is an ungraded assignment. If you want to grade something, you can type in here, and you can type that the student got 100 if you want to, or whatever you want to do. Now, when you type in a grade, a check will automatically go in this box here, and that check represents the assignments that you want to return to your students when you're ready to return them. If you don't want to return it yet, you can uncheck the box, and you can do that. Now, if you click on the student's name in this screen, it will give you more information. It will show you what's been submitted. If there's only one assignment to submit, it'll only show you that. But when you need to click on their name in order to click on and go to the assignment that they submitted. You can also see the submission history. If they have 3 or 4 different submissions, you can click on the submission history and see all of those submissions. Now, if you are going to grade an assignment in Google Classroom, you have to return that assignment to the students. Google Classroom does not allow you to grade and then not return the assignment. So that's another issue that I kind of have, because if I want to keep it for a while, I can't grade it and then return it. But if you don't like that feature, you can just grade it outside of Classroom instead of actually having it graded as out of 100 here. But then I can click on this and I can return this to the student. Now, once I return it to the student, yes, I want to return the assignment. And it says here that ownership will go back to Mickey. And it also says that I can add notes. So if I want to return it and add some notes, so I want to tell them what they want to fix. Fix this thing. I can tell them what they need to fix, and then they can actually work on it some more and turn it back in. So what's nice about this feature is it allows you to do some back and forth with your student. If you have an assignment that is going to be turned in over time and you want them to edit it and do things like that, you're capable of doing it with this program. You also don't have to grade it right away. You can return it without a grade and then come back later and put the grade on when you're finally done with the assignment. But at the end, when everything is all said and done and it's returned, the final ownership is going to be in the hands of the student after you hit that return button. Now, once you return an assignment, I said that you could go back and forth and students can resubmit and stuff like that. When an assignment has been returned, you can see this resubmit button right here, and that resubmit button will allow you to, or allow the student to resubmit their assignment. And then along with that, it will have any comments that I made. So you can see this comment that the teacher made that says fix this thing, so that if you give instructions in that comment for what needed to be tweaked or fixed, then the student would have a direction for where to go. You can also edit the document itself. You can go to the document and use comments on the document to make comments that the students can look at and adjust that way, as opposed to doing it outside of the document. A lot of times it might be easier to make corrections inside of the document instead of outside in just one window. Alright, now I wanted to show you a couple of other things, so I did a couple of other assignments. I did two different assignments down here. One is where I had the student never turn something in. So I have something here that's an assignment, and my student, Mickey Mouse, has never turned this assignment in. So I'm in the teacher view right now. If I click on this, what happens here is it says late in the status, and because it says late, then I know that the student hasn't turned it in yet. So anytime the status says late, that just means that the student has never completed that submission. The other possibility is if they turned it in, but they turned it in late. So I set up this assignment, and I set it up for earlier this morning, and then I made sure that this student turned it in late. So then when it finished, they turned it in late, so the status says done because they turned it in, but then in parentheses it says late. So it will show you when students don't turn anything in, when they turn it in but it's late, or when they turn it in and it's on time. And when it's on time, this status just shows that it's green instead of red. Now, the one other thing, and I think I messed it up so I can't really do it, but I can talk about it, is if a student never goes to an assignment and it's due already and they never got the assignment. Well, let me show you this way. A teacher can then, let me go to the teacher view. A teacher can return something that's never been assigned. So I'm going to put a grade in here. Oh, well, I don't need to put a grade, but I can return this to the student, and it gets returned to them even though they've never done it. Okay? So they've never done this, needs to be completed, and I'm returning it to them. Okay, so now if they click on it, instead of submit, there's something here that says resubmit. The other thing that can happen is if a student never actually clicks on an assignment and they don't get this template to come up, at this point, because they've never created the template before, when the student tries to resubmit an assignment or they try to look at it, it will have a little pop-up that says down here, do you want to create this? And it'll say something like it's never been created, do you want to create this? But that'll happen anytime a student does not turn it in originally or doesn't even go to the assignment. But I accidentally went to this assignment earlier, so I can't show you that feature, and it'll just open up. In any case, that is most, if not all, of the different interactions that you can see from the teacher and student side of things when you're working with this. Now, the reason that I did both the teacher and the students is because I think it's important from the teacher point of view to know what these things will look like from the student side so that you can troubleshoot a little bit. So let me add a couple more comments in that vein, and that is just simply that right now, I have experienced some downtime between creating the assignments and the students being able to view it, and that downtime has been as much as 15 minutes. Part of that might be because I'm using Internet Explorer, but another part might just be because it's slow to work. So I would make sure that you create the assignments before you get to class and not actually during the class, because if the downtime is substantial, it will create issues. The second issue that I have is that when assignments have actually been created, it sometimes takes a little bit of time for the students to actually get the template to work, because when they click on the assignment itself is when the assignment is created in the teacher's classroom folder. So until they actually click on the assignment, this is not created. So if you have 30 students, 30 of them have to click on the assignment, and then you would actually see in your drive 30 of these being created, and each one would have a different name for the student, but 30 of them are created at the same time. And there seems to be a little bit of a lag there too, nowhere near as drastic, but it might be a couple of minutes. So you need to be prepared when you're pushing these documents out to students that there might be a 2-minute or so lag time between when they get started and when they can actually view the assignment. And hopefully that gets taken care of or starts getting much faster, but if not, you need to be prepared. And you might want to, that might be a good time to give any further directions or have some other pre-planned things to do in that span of time. So I hope this video is helpful for what you are doing. And until I have another video, hopefully this helps in your class, and let's get to work.